Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Tech Show. I'm your host, Jon Myer. This week, we've been talking about this so-called multi-cloud. What is it? Are companies really investing in multiple cloud providers for the right reasons and capabilities? Are they selecting two or more providers for fear of vendor lock, or actually for their unique services they offer? I think you're going to want to stick around because I'm talking with public cloud leaders and experts around their experience dealing with multi-cloud, and is it really worth it? And before we bring on our next guest, how about you smash that like, subscribe, and notification button because we have more content on the way. Now, if you're interested in hearing from our previous public cloud experts, take a look up here. Today, I'd like to welcome a returning guest who specializes in data visualization from data lakes, big lakes, and those dark lakes to help you avoid those data swamps. CEO and co-founder of Bellflare Technologies, Tia. Tia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Always a pleasure, Jon.
I hope you liked my introduction from our previous discussions.
Absolutely. Always on par, on point.
Yeah, you know what? I try to make it as relevant as possible. Tia, for our audience, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and your company before we jump into our topic of multi-cloud?
Yes. So I am Tia. I'm the president and co-founder of Bellflare Technologies. We are an AWS APM partner, and we consult with different customers to help them with their strategy, whatever their data strategy may be that they would like to then utilize on AWS. And we just help them with the best, most cost-efficient, most secure way to do that and tell their data story. So in a nutshell, that is what we focus on. So.
Awesome. Tia, real quick, I'm going to do some technical stuff. Is your microphone close to you or the right mic selected? You sound a little bit of kind of off or distance. I want to make sure this recording is awesome.
Let me check my mic.
Yep. By the way, I'm leaving all this into the recording because this is what it's all about.
Okay, try. Is that good? Is that better or no?
Yeah, that's actually much clearer. Before it was coming a little bit of muffled. I want to make sure that I get you in the clearest possible way.
Okay, got it.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, Tia, real quick, multi-cloud. We are talking about multiple cloud providers, the top three, the big three. Now, there are others that exist. Everybody knows I'm partial to AWS, but I am not talking specific cloud providers. We are talking multi-cloud. What is your definition? What are your thoughts on multi-cloud?
Interesting. You say definition. I think it depends on the customer that you speak with. I think, as you mentioned, there is a big three that generally comes to mind when you think of definition of multi-cloud. But there are some more junior clouds. There's, I even, consider, I don't know. I mean, there's other, as you said, more junior cloud classifications, and customers will utilize them. But then they may also look at using shared services, as also a cloud. Maybe they're looking at 365 or some of those items. They're literally considering that as well in their strategy. And they want to make sure that you're able to consider all of those items as the way that they're perceiving multi-cloud, right? So I think it really, you working back from the customer is really based on what their definition is of multi-cloud and making sure that those elements that are in place are maintained or at least translated for them if you were to then shift them to something else that makes sense, whether it's from a cost perspective or an operational excellence perspective. I think each customer is going to be a little bit different, right, in how they perceive that.
Tia, you are truly customer obsessed. Out of all the, now I've had some awesome public cloud leaders and experts on the show. Nothing against any of them, but you're the first person that says, as the customer, what they think multi-cloud is and work backwards from it. Very interesting and unique perspective, because for them, they might just be thinking multi-cloud is, I have it hosted in another data center, and that's another cloud environment. I really like that. That's a new perspective. I think I'm going to tag you in this one.
Excellent. I appreciate that.
All right. So Tia, is it fair to say you're wrangling data and visualizing data for customers? And we've talked about Amazon Textract, we've talked about QuickSight, we've had those conversations, but data wrangling is really up in your expertise, correct?
Correct. That's where it all starts. Without the data, you don't have anything. So,
which is very interesting because a lot of our topics so far have been around, or discussions have been around, the data transfer cost between using multiple cloud providers, something that is very hard to calculate or articulate what it's going to cost. If you think it's going to cost you X, you might as well add 10 times to that because data grows and you can't calculate it. What are your thoughts on all this data in multiple cloud providers?
So what we try to tell our customers when we work backwards from their story is basically the data is going to help us to kind of go down a certain avenue, right? What type of data do you have and what's the life cycle principle of that data? How are you actually going to utilize that data so we can actually get a baseline of what that would look like? Then we want to look across the different cloud providers if that's something they're interested in. But we let them know definitely get a gold medal at one first. I think, besides the data, charges, as you mentioned, on one cloud, imagine doing that across 3 clouds. You're going to have a multiplier effect, even if the data doesn't grow. And is that something that you actually have calculated into your budget as a maintenance kind of fee month over month as part of, the run rate? So we always say, try to get a gold medal because usually a lot of times they're still trying to get their current resources also trained up on one or more of those clouds. Trying to do that at the same time is probably going to drive your current, as I like to call them, internal customers, your employees, crazy. So I would say if you want to do it in the best way possible, the most efficient way where you feel like you're guiding your, internal customers in the best way, do one because it's going to require knowledge transfer. It's going to require optimizing. And once you optimize and tell the story on one, then you can start to look at how that translates to the others. That's usually how we let them, let them know about if they really truly feel that they need to go multi-cloud. And what is it, really what is the business case for going multi-cloud? Is it, if it's vendor lock-in, that usually comes up. Is that really a true business case? Maybe you see one of the providers as a competitor in one area of your business, so you don't want them having certain data. That could be a business case. We've seen that before, right? But if it's just for vendor lock-in or something, I think I would probably have a further conversation with that customer to kind of level set as to the true business case and making sure that we're working efficiently towards goals and maybe putting that in context a little bit.
Very interesting that you mentioned really 3 key things. One, you're talking about the customer working backwards, but also asking them about their data. All right, where their data, how they want to utilize their data. You've talked about the skill sets, which has been echoed previously on our conversations in the podcast this week, is that now you need to train these people not on 1, 2, possibly 3 clouds. Talk about jack of all clouds. I am dubbing it as a term right now. You're a generalist, and that's actually good. And then you mentioned vendor lock. So I had a awesome recording with the CTO of Izer, Keith Townsend, this week, and he said, if you're selecting it for vendor lock or licensing, you're not selecting a cloud for the right reasons. You need to select the cloud for the right reasons. What are the unique services that you'll be utilizing that will take your application or business to the next level and make it easier? I don't think we have enough time in the show to talk about you literally grabbed all top 3. I want to stick, and by the way, vendor lock is definitely a thing that's on everybody's mind, but it's an old mindset. It's you're going to utilize it. Data and the skill set. We'll stick there for right now, but if we got some time, that vendor lock is definitely key. Data. Actually, let's jump to the skill set one, because it's very interesting that how do you retain your employees with all these vast majority of skills that are needed and required? Don't you think it's a little too much for companies to put all 3 clouds or even 2 clouds on 1 employee?
I would say yes, because all you have to do is talk to the internal customer or the employee, as we've mentioned, and they will let you know. right? They may not even have to say it. They may just express themselves. The body language you can read. It may
like, like, yeah, I'll do that for you.
Yeah. So, and you're always going to have all different types at your company anyhow, right? You're going to have kind of the ones that are, they were there at the beginning, the foundational, maybe they set up the on-premise environment. They may even call it their baby. You know, those internal customers are very special because they have a lot of the legacy knowledge, but you definitely want to, approach, moving forward in a way that they feel like it's adding benefit to them, right? And that's for each one of them, right? Each internal customer, you're going to have to help to move the needle on even learning 1 versus 3, let alone. Make sure that you are, setting up this knowledge transfer as a way of investment. You are investing in your current employees. You're not moving to cloud to then, kind of shun them or put them to the side while you bring in new resources. Even if you have to pepper in new resources, right, to help accelerate the learnings, whether it's with partner or you're looking at recruitment and you're bringing in, maybe some longer term, consultants, right, to kind of help pepper in our contract workers. That's something that you want to be very delicate and let them know that this is a benefit, right, to them. This is something that you're looking to invest in them, not just in the short term, but you're looking to address, long-term innovation and making sure that because they were there at the beginning of the story, you want to carry them through and make sure that they're, at the finish line, right, of where the company is trying to go. So that is, that's really key. And that's something that I think we really try to make sure that we're working with key decision makers in the company to make sure that that conversation is not only happening, but the investment is actually shown and it's actually something that, you got to have those employees dial in on that. They have to be in favor of that. That is the main thing. You got to have people before process and even before the platform you choose. We got to take care of our people.
People before the process or the platform you choose. Great quote. I am going to have to quote you for it. And, the last podcast I did with, if you heard of Disco Posse, everybody take a look up here for Eric Wright and our podcast we just did today. It's really interesting. He talked about, and we mentioned the bottom-up approach, not the top-down approach. Basically, if you don't have those who are hands-on or working to really drive the company, if they don't care, they're not bought into it, guess what? It doesn't matter what comes from the top. The skill sets, those who have been there a while really need to, embrace the new technology and want to do it. And if you're investing in them, they're going to invest in the success.
Absolutely. Time and time again, no matter what it is, regardless if you're talking platforms or, anything else at the company, the more that you have, all stakeholders at the table moving forward with any, decision, I think it's appreciated. Whether, you hear everybody's, viewpoint and whether or not you go 100% with everyone's idea, I think it's appreciated that they feel like they're a part of the journey and the process as much as possible from the very beginning. And they understand why you're even moving to cloud. They have to understand that, okay, there really is a driver other than, something that, they may or may not deem as, or maybe they don't know about it, right? They don't understand. And I think you want to bridge that understanding. You want to bridge that gap between, the boardroom and maybe even investors and what we're trying to accomplish to what they do on their, at their desk every single day. And that's regardless of whatever platform you choose. You want to make sure you do that first and foremost. Then it's a lot easier, I think, to segue into, the process in which how we're going to do it, and then get their buy-in even on how you're going to do it, right? Everybody's got great ideas. Let's make this a collective around the table. And then collectively with that, what's the strategy that we're going to use? And per that strategy, what makes sense to utilize from these different platforms? But start with one, right? First, get a gold medal at that, tell that story from start to finish, and then go back and measure, go back and talk to those, internal customers and say, hey, how has this benefited you? Get their feedback on it, optimize it, And then you can start with the second one. And I think that they'll see once you start with one and you go from start to finish, they'll feel really good about, and probably even, their velocity will be a lot quicker, right, in adopting the second. And potentially, if you need to have a third for whatever your business case is, based on the services that those different providers provide, that may be optimal for what you're trying to do, as you mentioned, with your applications.
I find it very unique on basically your insights on the internal customers. And we're talking about multi-cloud, but it's actually even a single cloud strategy is you're talking about investing in your internal customers in order to do this multi-cloud. So regardless of the subject, multi-cloud, single cloud, utilizing cloud in general and to branch out, what you need to do is invest in your internal customers. My next question is really around, are you seeing a number of enterprise companies really going multi-cloud, or is it just, certain ones for their business case?
I think it's a mixed bag. It depends. I've seen larger enterprises that maybe for another business value and another side of the business that kind of is tied to the cloud business, not 100%, they will make a deal. So, all things on the table here, just being transparent. Sometimes there's something else that's very tangible from one of the larger big three, as you mentioned, that they need for their business case that is very much something that they're already locked and ready and they've already budgeted for, and it's something that they need. They'll give them a deal and a break on that to actually then say, hey, let's look at utilizing cloud instead of you maybe, investing more in boxes and hardware and bringing your own servers in. Let's try, some of this innovation on the cloud, right? As well. So it's almost like it's coming as a bundle or a package deal. So a lot of times it's, like you said, you have to go company by the business case. I have also seen companies do multi-cloud across, they may think that one of the big three is in one part of a major part of their business, a competitor. And so they will utilize them for maybe more their day-to-day items, but not necessarily their customer data, right? And maybe their advertising and all of that good stuff, right? That's really driving the business. So it really just depends. But we do see them with multi-cloud, right? And we've also seen where if you already are buying the hardware or the laptops or whatever within a company, it just kind of makes sense to bundle in then, that particular company's cloud, not for any functionality, but from a business, partnership, friendship, if you want to call it, state, whatever ships you want to put on that, but not necessarily because it was more superior as a cloud service provider over the others. It's tied a lot of times to something else, right? And then we do see companies that are doing the due diligence. They really are sitting down with us and strategizing as to what applications make sense with what services based on the outcome that they are trying to achieve. They want to achieve the best outcome. And those are the ones that tend to be very thoughtful. They tend to innovate from a place that's not, chaotic. And it tends to be very well organized. And they tend to be the ones that are more willing to invest in their employees and do the people process before platform pathway as well, too, on the roadmap.
Tia, I wish I had so much more time to pick your brain. I can't write it. I have to watch this recording again and write down all these cool things. First of all, you talked about business units, okay? And I don't think that was even thought of or brought up, where you might have a huge enterprise company, but within each has a business unit that does not want to go to one of the big three because it's a competitor of that unit. So now you have a driving factor internally to use multiple cloud providers based off of those business unit needs. And they're telling the company, guess what? I'm not using that. I'll use it for X, but all my data is going to go into Y. Very interesting. I have to capture that. I definitely really want to put this down and put this out there to people, because that's not even one of my questions. By the way, we didn't get to any of my questions because you have so much insight on this. And the last thing I got to comment on, because I have one more question before we're out of time, is those who are taking a methodical approach and making sure that they are getting it right and utilizing the tools to make it very secure for their company and using multiple cloud providers. I love all the information you just gave me. I don't think I can retain any more. My last question for you is, what would you advise a company that's planning to go multi-cloud? What would be like maybe the top one or two things that you would give them and says, think about these first before you go multi-cloud?
First thing I would say is definitely invest in the time that it will take to truly do the planning up front, the strategy. You really want to have a solid plan that's well thought out. Invest in that. I think a lot of times it's not something that companies think about, like investing in what would the roadmap look like. But that does actually take a lot of planning and a lot of thought from an outside third party. I think working with their teams as well, because they're the SMEs, right, on the inside. But we're external, and I think we'll look at it with new eyes and fresh eyes, and we'll also be able to bring in some expertise from other consulting that we've done to come at and arrive at the best options for them. So I think it's always good to have that. That's the first thing. I see people sometimes try to skip right into what they know they should do. And there may be an opportunity to truly optimize and really get some knowledge share even right on the front. So truly invest in that. I say measure twice, cut once. That's what I would suggest. And I think beyond that, making sure that a good, decent portion of that plan is how are you going to invest in your employees? Big time. Have that well thought out. Have the training well thought out. If they're getting certifications along the way that correlate to that actual cloud provider that you're going to use, make them feel good about you're building them up as they're building your company up, right? Because that follows the individual. And I think, what are some other outcomes and goals, outside of the company goals? What are the individual employees? Have them put some goals down from a personal aspect to make sure that you're aligning some of those as well, right? Everybody should win. So I would say those are like my top two items. And then after that, probably the third one I would say is whatever approach or cloud provider that you take, make sure that you fit in the budget. As you mentioned, when you're optimizing and you now have unlimited compute power, what are you going to do with that year over year? Try to take a look at where's the business going year over year and make sure that you have in the budget for that, not just to pay your cloud bill, but also then a third party that may be allowing you to now move into AI, machine learning, and add on some of those other elements that are going to definitely take you to the next level and always make you cutting edge and, grab up all that market share on the front end. Make sure that that's not an afterthought. That needs to be included. So that way you actually have that built in into your IT budget every year as well, too.
Everybody should win. I can't write all these down. Every time I talk to you, I come up with, I always enjoy our conversations. You have some great quotes, some inspirational stuff that it's a driving factor. I really appreciate it. Remember, everybody, if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and the notification because I got more content on the way. Tia, I want to thank you so much, and I really appreciate you always joining the show and our conversations.
Absolutely. I thoroughly enjoy them. Jon, have an excellent day. Thank you.
Thank you, you too.